Well, it's Wednesday at 4, so it must be Baldy and the Blonde, only it's just the blonde. Baldy's not here. I think he's driving a garbage truck somewhere. Baldy?
I'm not driving a garbage truck, and I am here. I'm just not there. I'm here.
Well, you're here, but you're not here.
I'm where I am.
Yes, you are where you are.
I'm at an undisclosed location near Albuquerque.
Aha. Aha. Well, we have a few things to talk about on this last show before the election. I think there was a big party this week. Did you hear that?
There was a big party last weekend. So, all right. So, for all you listeners, you may have heard that the Democrats are now comparing Donald Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden just last week with a pro-Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden only 85 years ago. So if you're thinking that's
85 years ago?
85 years ago in 1939.
Okay.
So you're thinking that's stupid and ridiculous. I think that you'd be correct. And we do happen to have a couple of sound bites. The first one is from some so-called journalist named Jonathan Capehart at MSNBC. That is clip number 1, if we can hear that, please.
That jamboree happening right now in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally. A rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi banners. Now, against that backdrop of history, Donald Trump is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism.
Really? That place, I know somebody else, some other host says it, but that really is a televised national mental institution, MSNBC. Anyway,
Yeah.
I didn't find that it was chilling at all. And by the way, it wasn't in that place. Madison Square Garden, let's see, in 1939, was a mile away from the current garden. And by the way, it was torn down, as in demolished, in 1968, and a new garden was opened. So, anyway, just pointing it out. Other than that, I wonder if anyone had Nazi flags. I saw some Israeli flags, but anyway. Next is the brilliant and always honest and insightful Hillary Clinton. Last week on CNN, that's clip 2, please.
One other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book. President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled that neo-Nazis, fascists in America were lining up to essentially pledge their support for the kind of government that they were seeing in Germany. So I don't think we can ignore.
I think it got cut off a little bit, but anyway.
Oh, she said they were actually reenacting.
That's what she said.
That's like if they built a new arena in Rome and named it the Colosseum, and they put it across town from the ancient structure. And then the NFL announced that the Cowboys would play the Lions there. And then Hillary Clinton and Jonathan Capehart, that would condemn the NFL for reenacting man versus lion battles in that place. It's a whole different thing name.
Oh, my God.
Oh, okay. So what Hillary also said, President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled, but he would have been several years late to the party for that in 1939. Because I found an interesting quote from an article by an American professor of Jewish history. This is quoting. He says, FDR sent Secretary of Commerce Daniel Roper to address a pro-Nazi rally in New York City in 1933. At that rally, Nazi Germany's ambassador to the United States was the keynote speaker, and the podium and hall were decorated with swastika flags.
And so wait, you're telling me that
FDR,
go ahead.
FDR sent someone there.
He sent his Secretary of Commerce there to address the pro-Nazi rally. Hillary, get your facts straight. Well, I guess, he wasn't anti-Nazi in 1933, obviously, if he was sending his cabinet members to speak to the Nazis. But I guess maybe he was early in the game and he deserves a break. Oops. But then, a few weeks after he was sworn in 1933, there was a massive anti-Nazi protest at Madison Square Garden with 23,000 people inside and 40,000 people outside. Guess Hillary didn't know about that. Anyway, so you might think that FDR would have seen the light, right? Because there's a huge protest against the Nazis in 1933 and immediately changed his attitude and corrected his evil Nazi-loving ways. But you'd be wrong.
You would be wrong. So check this out. From that same article that I quoted from before, it says, in 1937, the administration sent one of its senior diplomats to represent the United States at the annual Nazi Party rally in Nuremberg.
Whoa. What? What?
Right?
Somebody needs to let Hillary know that, man, the Democrat king, FDR, the king of the Democrats, the beginning of all socialism in America, was apparently quite solicitous of the Nazis. I mean,
apparently so.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And don't forget, in 1942, there was FDR's executive order that put scores of thousands of Japanese Americans imprisoned in concentration camps with no charges, no appeal. These are men, women, and children there for years under FDR's executive order. So, no, I doubt, Hillary, that FDR was appalled. And let's not forget that the leftist media and academics always put FDR where number one or number two on the list of best presidents, when really he was, if you really want to find a president or any politician in the U.S. where you can draw some comparisons to Hitler and what Hitler did and said, I think you should point first to FDR. I'm not saying he's like the leftist Trump's like Hillary. He's not, and FDR was not. But he did all the things that we just read through.
Well, I mean, that's providing
Japanese Americans in the concentration camp.
Yeah, I mean, that's blatant. I mean, they can't point to anything like that with Trump, of course. It's ridiculous.
No,
it's just they're desperate because everything they accuse Republicans of doing, or anyone who's not a left-wing freak Democrat, I don't even call them Democrats, they're communists, anyone who's not like them is Hitler or a Nazi or something. Right. Meanwhile, they lock us up like they did to the Japanese. You know, they're locking up their political enemy. So anyway, I think you have another clip, don't you?
I do. It comes with a trigger warning because this is really chilling audio footage of a convention at the actual current Madison Square Garden many years ago.
Okay.
But what you're about to hear is extreme rhetoric that many liberals will find offensive.
People are working harder than ever, spending less time with their children, working nights and weekends at their jobs, and their incomes are still going down. Their taxes are still going up, and the cost of health care, housing, and education are going through the roof. Our people are pleading for change, but government is in the way. It's been hijacked by privileged private interests. We'll say everybody can borrow the money to go to college, but you must do your part. You must pay it back.
What?
Well, sorry for the extreme rhetoric. That, of course, was Bill Clinton accepting the Democrat Party nomination for president back in 1992 at the actual Madison Square Garden as it exists today.
Whoa.
Madison Square Garden. Hillary was there, too, on that stage, but I'll bet you did not see that coming. Huh.
I saw what you did there. I'll bet you did not see that coming. Okay. And what did Bill say? Oh, things that sound just like Democrats of today. No, sound just like conservatives, Republicans, RFK, Tulsi, everyone else. Taxes are too high. Families are being squeezed by the high cost of living. Government's been hijacked by the privileged private interests, the deep state, and everyone must pay back their student loans. Sounds like a crazed Trump supporter to me.
Yeah, you know what? If Trump spoke those very words at the Nazi rally that he was just leading last weekend, if at that Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden, Trump had said these exact quotes, the left would be all over him.
Yeah,
You know, what do you mean government's been hijacked by the privileged private interest and pay back student loans? Are you crazy? And the cost of living's not that high. We got it under control.
It just goes to prove what we say all the time is that, hey, this ain't your daddy's Democratic Party. And we will be back in just a few minutes with Baldy and the Blonde in New Orleans. I'm a superstar. Oh, yeah. Trying to be. Superstars. This is Michele Godin along with Tom Coates from a remote location high in the garbage mounds of New Jersey, looking for fellow supporters. Like, I believe the President of the United States called all Trump supporters garbage.
He did. He tried to walk it back, but...
He tried, but it's clear as a bell that he and people are flipping out over it. He's done it before. When he had that bizarre speech where he stood in front of honestly looked like Hitler's stage with the red background and the military men.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. That was one of his finer moments where he said half of the country was a threat to democracy. So that's a problem because it appears that, and we'll get to this in a minute, the Department of Defense has moderated a prior ruling saying they can now use lethal force against American citizens. So we will get to that shortly. But first we're going to talk a little bit about, what we try to do here is bring you what we talk about. We try to do it like lawyers with proof. So we don't just say something. We usually give you what we're talking about in the speaker's own words. So part of what you've seen this week from the crazy, insane people in the press is, that Trump's going to be a dictator. Trump's going to try to use the military against people. And, they always start with, he said he'd be a dictator on day one. So if we could please play clip 4. So you can hear for yourself.
You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except what?
He's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border, and I want to drill.
That's not retribution.
We love this guy. He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" I said, "No, other than day one."
Donald Trump reacting to reports about what a second term would look like and concerns that he would govern as an authoritarian. Donald Trump is no longer merely suggesting he'll be a dictator should he win a second term. Now, he's just coming right out and he's saying it.
Okay, that is just the greatest example of how the media lies incessantly like crazed lunatics. And to me, I don't know how anybody can sit there and watch MSNBC and CNN if they've ever listened to the clip we just played or the clips we played last week of very fine people or all the other lies that they tell. And it's just propaganda. And what they've done to America is we can't just have a discussion about where do you stand on immigration, Kamala versus Trump. Where do you stand on inflation? Where do you stand on taxes? Where do you stand on war? No, because they're wrong on every single issue, so they have to distract everyone with lies. So, anyway, that's the setup, just to remind you of how psychotic they are. So, Tom, you want to talk about the next clip?
It was on Fox News, I think.
With Maria Bartiromo. Mm-hmm.
And he did say, and the left jumped all over this because they take everything out of context, when he said, if really necessary, those were his exact words.
Yeah.
If really necessary, then they may have to use the military on American soil to help protect life and property.
Correct. And basically, they cut out the whole lead up to it. But Maria Bartiromo was asking him, do you think there'll be chaos after the election? He said, not from my supporters. But, he said, but if we do, then, the president just has to control it. You either call it the National Guard if it's bad, and if it's really bad, you call it the military, which under the Insurrection Act of 1807, the president is allowed to do, and presidents have done in the past. They do it very reluctantly because you don't want to do that. You don't want to have that kind of chaos in the streets. And there was some discussion even during the George Floyd Summer of Love using the Insurrection Act, and he never did. In fact, he's never done anything that they say he's going to do this time because because they're insane. Clip number 5, please.
Joe Biden said he doesn't think it's going to be a peaceful election day.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
There you go. So, of course, he's
They
correct.
can't let that happen. He's just trying to keep the peace.
Yeah, so all this psychosis that you see on the bedwetters of left-wing media, it's almost like we talk about them too much because they're so irrelevant when you compare their reach to, say, a podcast like Joe Rogan got 38 million views in his 3-hour interview with Trump, but they're still,
YouTube.
Yeah, and that's YouTube. So, I'm surprised they let it.
Well, you know what else the left did with this? What they ran with when he's talking about using the military, they were trying to make it sound like he's talking about reporters, which is laughable when you listen to what he said, or reporters or his political opponents or enemies or whatever. He obviously meant that if there is a real insurrection and you do need to bring out the National Guard, and really, if it's really necessary, then the military, well, then you do. He obviously was reluctant about the whole notion.
Well, yes.
And he obviously meant to protect life and property should he called them left lunatics go crazy, but he wasn't talking about reporters and his political opponents, but you'll see the media try to spin it that way.
Well, of course. One of them actually, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was. Might have been Nicole Wallace and someone else having a conversation, and the guy's like, well, you and I could end up in an internment camp together. I feel like going, well, the last person that put Americans in an internment camp was, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So, thanks. Let's roll with clip number 6. This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about military force against Americans.
The Biden-Harris administration has done something 2 weeks ago that has never been done in American history, which is to send a directive to the Pentagon, changing the law to make it legal for the U.S. military to use lethal force against American citizens on American soil. Under this directive, it will become legal for the U.S. military to shoot and kill Americans who engage in political protest because they disagree with policies in the White House. I'm not making this up. Any of you can look it up. This did not come from Donald Trump.
This comes
It
from
came from the Democratic Party. And that's why I left the Democratic Party.
There you go. So, anybody who's telling you, like the press, in fact, the only person talking about using, lethal force against American citizens are the Democrats. And they're in power, and they have shown a willingness to use muscle against their opponents. And we can talk more about that later. This is Michele Godin along with Tom Coates. We are Baldy and The Blonde in New Orleans, and we will be right back. Welcome back, New Orleans, and everyone far and wide. This is Michele Godin with Baldy and the Blonde. And we have Mr. Tom Coates remote today.
I'm in that far and wide category.
Oh, yes, you're definitely far and wide. Before we move into the next segment, if everybody would please give us a like or a follow on our Facebook radio group, Baldy and the Blonde radio group, the Baldy and the Blonde radio show, sorry. Also, you can follow us on Twitter. It's really me right now. It's called @BaldyBlonde, and we will be announcing Tom's handle next week. But @BaldyBlonde, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm pretty spicy on there. And go to our YouTube and Facebook page and our website, baldyandtheblonde.com. Thank you. That it helps us a lot if you can take the time to do that. I appreciate it. Anyway, more about the crazed left, who I guess is really desperate at this point because now, as you know, that from the first segment, they're calling us Nazis, comparing us to Hitler, Trump to Hitler. Everybody's a Nazi. Everybody's garbage. I guess when you can't address the issues of immigration, inflation, war, etc., censorship, then all you got left is name-calling. But some people have really had it because this Hitler thing is despicable, especially, look, when, from time immemorial, people would say, if you had Hitler in the crib, would you kill him? So it's a call to kill Trump is what it is. And it's disgusting and despicable. And that's what they're doing, and that's what they want, because they've tried everything else to get rid of him and our movement towards freedom, which has attracted people from all parties. And so the call of Hitler and Nazis is meant to get some crazed or non-crazed person pretending to be crazed to kill him. So it's highly offensive. And Ari Fleischer, who used to be, was it George Bush's press secretary?
Wasn't he, the second George Bush's press secretary?
Yes, W's press secretary. So he was really offended by this use of Hitler and the slinging around the Nazi arguments. And so if we could play clip 7, I think it's worth listening to Mr. Fleischer.
My mother came to the United States in 1939 because she fled the Nazis. She, her parents, and her brother were the few Hungarian relatives I had who saw the threat, left on what we believe was the last passenger ship to cross the Atlantic before the U-boats started to sink everything that moved across the Atlantic. The German Nazi U-boats. Most of my family perished in the Holocaust. I have very few relatives left. That's who the Nazis are. I don't need the Democrats to remind me of that. By making these things up, by making our American politics that the people who might beat them, the people they don't like because of domestic political issues, are fascists, are Nazis.
Right on, Ari. Right on. It is offensive, it is despicable, and it's disgusting.
Well, and entirely inaccurate. I mean, it's just stupid.
Well, it is stupid too, but it's offensive. You know, it's more than stupid.
It is offensive.
I mean, if anybody's acting like a fascist, who's doing the censoring?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Who's jailing their political opponents? Didn't Steve Bannon just got out of doing a 4-month sentence for literally exactly the same thing that King Obama's AG, Eric the Weasel Holder, did. And he didn't do a lick of time, neither did Laura Lerner, the former head of the IRS, who targeted conservatives, or the multiple liars, my favorite two, Brennan and Clapper, who lied to Congress, said they weren't spying on Americans. Nothing has happened to anyone. But they put Bannon in jail because he is a major voice for conservative radio. And they wanted to shut him up. So he came out.
Good news, though?
Yeah.
The good news with these guys calling Trump and the conservatives Nazis, fascists, all that. The good news is they've been doing that for years.
Yes.
And here we are just days before the election, and they're still doing that, which proves they got nothing. If they had anything, they would play it. They're dumb.
You're right.
They've exhausted everything.
You're right. Yeah.
I mean, nothing but stupid name calling.
But yeah, I feel like stupid isn't a serious enough word for what they're doing. They're invoking, one of the all-time most evil people in history.
Well, no, they are. What I meant was, it's literally stupid. In addition to offensive and inaccurate and all that, it makes no sense because it's just not even close to true, and it's stupid.
Right. And going on with who's acted like a fascist, authoritarian pig. Well, in addition to the people I just mentioned that just got out of jail, they have put doctors in jail, and not jail. They've taken doctors' licenses for saying the wrong things about COVID. That's all the Democrats. They've tried to disbar every lawyer that handled an election case, and that's so that if they cheat this time, lawyers will be scared to lose their license by challenging voter irregularities, which are happening now. So
happening already.
Yeah. Catholics, they've gone after Catholics, old ladies who were praying the rosary at abortion clinics, people who were let in through the velvet ropes on J6. It's just disgusting that they have the nerve, and they cannot find anything comparable from the other side. It's insanity. It really is. Anyway, so let's listen to Tulsi Gabbard's viewpoint on whether or not Kamala Harris is a good choice for America. That would be clip number 8, please, Kobe.
How can we trust a person to uphold her oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States who does not believe in the First Amendment? We can't. Exactly. How can we trust a person to uphold her oath to the Constitution who doesn't believe in the Second Amendment and our right to protect our loved ones? How do we trust someone in the presidency to uphold the rule of law when over the last 4 years Kamala Harris has allowed open borders and 20 million plus people in who their very first act was to break our laws?
Yep. And that's Tulsi Gabbard, who was a rising star in the Democrat Party, ran for president, was the head of the co-chair of the DNC, Democrat National Committee, and she left the party primarily because... Go ahead.
She's a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve.
Yes, Army Reserves. That's right. I forgot that.
And she's
the
brilliant.
bomb.
She is honest, and she actually just not only did she leave the Democrat Party, she recently joined the Republican Party.
Yeah,
which,
just this week, I think, in the last week. Yeah, and she enlisted after 9/11, and just to further buttress my claim that if anybody's acting like an authoritarian Nazi pig, it's the Democrats. They assigned Tulsi to the terrorist watch list under the Quiet Skies program and had her followed by 7 people. Imagine we wasted sky marshals and federal agents following Tulsi Gabbard around in airports. And don't tell me that's not political retribution, because that's what the Democrats are all about. So I am not listening to any more wah, 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 y'all are Hitler, y'all are fascists. Tell you what, because what we bring here is we bring the evidence. I would try this case in a court of law any day and line up the evidence and see what you got, because y'all got nothing except whiny crybabies in the media. No evidence. And Tulsi Gabbard is a heroic person. And for her to be chased around by the federal government like we don't have real terrorists that they let in at the border, they ought to be looking at, not wasting our federal resources on her. I mean, that is freaking insane. So, anyway.
I think we have another clip.
Yeah, maybe set this one up. Because this is just, why do these pompous generals, a few of them that got fired, turn around and make up stuff about Trump, like, whatever he said about he admired Hitler's generals. Of course, everyone else in the room said,
the fact.
Right,
Yeah.
He didn't say it 5 years ago when he got fired. He waited till a week before the election, because that's believable. Yeah. And, like, he doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. And, by the way, he makes money off illegal immigration. And it's I have the article, but it's a long story. I can't explain it, but he's affiliated with a group that makes lots of government contracts to house illegals. Anyway, so one of the reasons I heard Sean Spicer, who used to be Trump's first press secretary, talking about is that Trump likes to listen to everybody before he makes a decision. I thought this was a really interesting clip. So if we could please play clip number 9. I had never heard this before.
We were talking about Afghanistan policy one day, and he said, I want 10 enlisted soldiers to come in that have served in Afghanistan. And he sat them around a table and said, tell me about your experience. And it pissed a lot of people off that he wasn't taking the advice of the more senior people and asking the actual enlisted folks, tell me what your experience has been. Did you understand the mission? Are we winning? Are we moving forward? Were you getting the equipment and the tools that you needed? They hated that. They hated the fact that they came in, gave their PowerPoint presentation, and they were being undermined by a guy who didn't just sign off on it with like a blank check.
I mean, that's pretty...
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. It has the President of the United States who, Trump was known, for young people who listen to the show, Trump was really popular before he won the presidency in 2016 by, Democrats, rappers, black people, white people, Asians, Hispanics. He was just a well-loved human. And he used to walk around his job sites as a builder and talk to the contractors and stuff to see, how things were really going. So it's in keeping with the fact that he would consult with actual soldiers on the ground to find out what's going on. And, that's how he was able to solve the skating rink problem in New York that the government had dragged its feet for years, and he finished the whole thing in 2 months. So he's a different guy, and they don't like that because Washington's all about getting your power and keeping your power. and he
Well,
is
and
quite the thorn
the
in their side.
Yeah, it's the flow of money.
That's it.
That's specifically what Sean Spicer was talking about. Because when you move a plan forward, you move money forward to where you want it. And Trump was all about talking to the enlisted men to find out what was working, what was actually working on the ground.
All right, we got 10 seconds.
Needed on the ground.
7, 6, and we will be back with Baldy and the Blonde.
Do you speak where they tell you? Yeah, do you dream?
Do you dream when they tell you? Because that's not America. Welcome back. This is Michele Godin at Baldy and the Blonde, broadcasting live from New Orleans, and Tom from some remote location. And we are here on our last show before the election. Next Wednesday when we come back, I guess they'll have counted, what do you think, Tom, 10% of the ballots? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll know the results just in time for next January 6th, I think.
That sounds good. That sounds about right. So, following up on where we were, we had just listened to Sean Spicer talking about Trump making the generals mad because he invited 10 soldiers in and wanted to know what they thought and took their advice into consideration about what to do in Afghanistan. And, of course, the generals and Biden are the ones that got 13 soldiers brutally killed and left 78 million or billion, I forget, some atrocious amount of money in Bagram Air Force Base, all because of, I guess, following Biden and his, I don't know, not trustworthy generals. I bet you if you'd asked some soldiers about how to get out, it'd have gone a lot better. So that's
exactly.
Yeah, and so so what I was going to say too is that along the same lines that if you want to really get a feel for Donald Trump, listen to the Joe Rogan podcast or Theo Vaughn, who by the way is from Covington. The Theo Vaughn had 14 million views. Aiden Ross, Lex Friedman, Tyrus. I love Tyrus' interview. That was great. Barstool Logic, The Undertaker. You know, he's a guy that's willing to sit down and talk to anybody. Whereas Kamala Harris, you can't, you have no idea other than we have all these clips of her from when she was telling the truth in 2019 when she was trying to run for president and didn't get a single vote and had to drop out before the Iowa primary.
Which don't forget, she still to this day has 0 votes.
0 votes. I have as many votes as her for president. So do you, Tom.
Yeah,
you too,
right.
Kobe. Everybody has as many votes as her.
You know, it's important to point out that of all those podcasts, and a number of them that Trump's been on, remember, those are long form.
Yes. He sits there for hours with he has none of these rules like she has. Don't ask me this. And then she's got 60 minutes editing her to make her look better because she sounds like word salad. I mean, but I unlike other people, I don't think she's stupid. I think she is a cunning communist. That's what I think. And she knows better than to say what she previously said, and believe me, she regrets what she previously said because people like us have played it, but it's a damn shame that you'll never hear her talking about breaking into the sanctity of your locked home to see if you're a responsible gun owner. You'll never hear that on the real MSM news, right? Never. While they cry about us being fascist. I mean, it's just, anyway. So
we've played that clip a few times. It is so shocking that if you were to just read the quote, like people wouldn't tend to believe you because it is totally shocking.
It's true.
And I don't think we can get to it this show, but
no, we can't.
But we will be playing it.
Well, the reason I brought up those podcasts is I was reading from some young person was talking about his mom said, she didn't like how Trump sounded with because he says, things that are just boorish, right? And so he had her listen to one of those long form podcasts, and she totally changed her mind. And he thought, it was a young person talking, that Trump talks like his grandfather, and that's just a person from a different generation speaks differently. But if you listen to him for a long period of time, I just think he's much more appealing as a president than than this woman who lies through her teeth, and worse, has all the media frantically, desperately covering up and lying. And don't forget, they frantically and desperately covered up and lied about Biden's dementia to us. And they told us she was awful, but once they realized she was their only hope, now she's the second coming of Barack Obama, which she ain't. So,
yeah, never forget that she was part of covering up Biden's dementia.
That's right. That's right, and that's a betrayal of her,
and continues to.
Yeah, continues. I mean, it's a betrayal of her oath of office, and to this moment, like, who's to say if they catch Biden, you know, before he's had his ice cream and his dodo and his nap, and there's an international crisis, who trusts him to handle it? And then if it's, oh well, someone else is running the country, well, that is not exactly the American way either, is it? We just got to get out of this this lying vortex of scum that is the current media. And I'm pretty convinced that you think we'll ever see a debate on mainstream media again, because I think their days are numbered. You look at their numbers; they can't even. I mean, CNN has like 100,000 to 300,000 viewers.
Oh yeah, right. And compared to all those long form podcasts,
right.
their numbers are minuscule. And I'll tell you what, that. Because now Trump has shown that if you really want to get out there, that's where the medium that you use is the long-form podcast. And for years, these politicians have been used to speaking in 10, 20, 40-second sound bites.
Yep.
You can't get away with that on these long-form, but what if long-form becomes your only way to go?
Then we'll have much better leadership in this country, because she wouldn't go on Joe Rogan without, you come to me, I'll only do an hour. She had all kinds of rules, and he's like, yeah, no. So Vance is going to be on, so that'll be interesting, But anyway, just touching real quickly on some of the recent court decisions. One of them was today. The Democrats sued in Virginia. You ready? To place illegal non-citizens' names back on the voters' rolls. That was the Democrats. That's what they. So it had to go all the way to the Supreme Court, where you would think it would be 9-0, but it was 6-3. And in fact, the illegals can't vote, but they wanted them. They wanted them on those voter rolls. So, and then Georgia wants to remove the ability to conduct surveillance of the drop boxes. So that's the Democrats' position, and the Republicans have had to file suit on that. And going back, by the way, to the Virginia decision, Governor Kane, who was Hillary Clinton's running mate, was the one who actually enacted the law that said, illegals couldn't be on the rolls, you could take them off. But today's Democrats were like all for it. Yeah.
You know why he was pushing that? Because he's a closet Nazi. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, yeah, no,
Not very many people know.
He's probably visited Madison Square Gardens, and that's all it takes. Right?
Yeah, exactly. If you go to a Knicks game, well, obviously. All
right, a few more things. We have a minute and 17 seconds, so I'm going to take this opportunity just to say that I really appreciate all y'all's feedback, and please feel free to contact us at Baldy Blonde on Twitter. But I'm just going to make a pitch here that the left is dangerous. This is not the party of JFK. That is why people from so many parties have joined in the movement. Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Russell Brand, I can't even think of them all, Dave Rubin, former Democrats. Because we do want another 20 million illegals invading our country, 435, criminals running the streets, inflation, censorship, war, and aren't we sick of the lies from the media? So feel free to re-listen to our shows, because most of the shows are not me or Tom talking. It is the voice of the left and the right, so that you can judge for yourself. We are, again, Baldy and the Blonde. Please check us out on baldyandtheblonde.com, the Baldy and the Blonde radio show, at Baldy Blonde on Twitter, and we will see you next Wednesday, hopefully with a new president.